Hey everybody, and welcome back to Project 224, where we are committed to applying the true knowledge and wisdom found only in Christ to the everyday world around us. And we're back, everybody.
What's going on?
How's it going, Paul?
Doing all right.
Yeah?
Super excited today. We have a guest. We're going to try this again.
We do have a guest, and we're so excited for our guest today.
Yeah, I'm excited for this subject too. So this is Caitlin McKinley. Say hi.
Hey guys.
So we are excited because, lots of reasons. Caitlin, you do a photography thing, right?
Yeah, so I have a photography business, and I'm starting to sell art prints and things like that too. Right. So
nice. How long have you been doing it?
Probably only like 2 years. People are always kind of surprised by that, but I'm like, yeah, I've been doing it for that long.
And we have Caitlin's photography in our house because she actually did our family pictures.
Awesome. Yeah. I know there's a lot of people that have used Caitlin for a lot of things. And she's very talented.
Very talented.
Probably at the end of this, we can post we can put like links and stuff.
Yeah, we'll definitely put a link to her site and contact information.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But today I'm excited because we are going to talk about the beauty of God. I think after our last podcast, I needed something a little bit lighter.
A little bit lighter, yeah. It's funny you talk about that podcast because we were talking about how I was like, "Did you sound angry on it?" You're like, "I felt a lot angrier than I sounded."
Inside of me, there was a raging hurricane.
Yeah, so
and it came out.
It's nice to have a little bit lighter of a subject. Today.
Yeah. So, anyways, how we doing?
Where to begin? So we've known Caitlin. So Caitlin, just kind of a background, I guess. You grew up in the area, or?
Yeah, I grew up in Ormond, then went to school at the University of Florida, and now I'm back here. Yeah, go Gators.
I mean, it's an okay school.
Yeah, I will say this too. On a side note, I remember when Caitlin came back from school, and I was so excited because she's such an asset to the church.
Absolutely.
Not just of her photography and things like that she sees, but one of the biggest things that you and I have talked about, Paul, is her heart for discipleship has been huge to the young girls in our church. And I know we were talking about maybe we could have her on again in some other time. Talk about discipleship. I think that'd be a great...
Because you work with the youth ministry, right?
Yeah, I work with a lot of the girls and youth, and I really love it. They're really sweet, so...
Yeah, youth ministry keeps you young.
Yeah.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
They can be stressful, but they actually keep... I don't know.
It's a hard thing to do,
yeah.
To be diligent with them is one thing, it's just stay involved with them. So.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so like we said, we're going to talk about God... being the standard of beauty. And I think this is something that is going to be a good subject. It's a little bit different than before because we don't necessarily think of art, at least when I went through things, we don't necessarily think of art as having like an objective standard to it.
Mm-hmm.
So many times people are like, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, one man's treasures or another man's trash when I'm talking about, different things with art and taste and whatnot. But I think that's an influence of postmodernism that's come about where they think anything is now, anything is art.
Yeah, I agree.
And in actuality, when you look at what they've talked about in postmodernism, you can see that they actually talk about how what postmoderns tried to do is show that since everything can be made art, that it's almost like nothing. Since everything's art, almost nothing's art. Everything can be beautiful, so beauty is very much something that has no standard to it. And I think that's led to some of the things that we see in some of the art museums now. But God has something to say about that. And you don't necessarily think about it, but God has something to say about art.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's nothing new under the sun that we've learned. So, people say all the time that God is the master artist. You ever see a sunset, you're like, you always see people post stuff and they say, oh, what a grand masterpiece that God's created and stuff like that. And it is true.
Yeah.
I feel like that very often. I'm sure, Caitlin, when you're taking pictures and stuff, you're always thinking, man, like, there's no way that man could replicate any of this that's happening,
Yeah, it's one of those things where when you're out there, especially like when I have opportunities to travel or do like landscape photography, you can just see so many threads of, what God has created, and as he's like the ultimate standard of what creativity and what beauty looks like. And it's really cool because, even in photography, we just capture that on a camera. It's not like we actually invent that. So it's really cool looking for those things and looking for what God has created in that way,
That's
with
awesome.
Photography.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, think about it. During creation, after each day, right, God said, and it was good.
Right.
And then after he created man, he said it was very good,
Mm-hmm.
Man and woman. So, and in that goodness, there was a beauty within that. And obviously that beauty, we've lost some of that beauty in the depravity of sin. When sin entered the world, then almost the antithesis happened. Then ugliness came in, and we yearn for the day when it all is beautiful again. But still, God has blessed us with beauty in that. And you think about it, John 1:3, right?
Mm-hmm.
When God created the earth, He created everything, right? And anything that was made for God. It says all things were made through Him. Without Him was not anything made that was made. So God created everything. Therefore, He had to have created beauty, because He created something very specifically, and He created it like He wanted it to be. And so He both created like the objects that are beautiful, but then the ability and capacity to recognize that beauty.
Yeah, and I think it's really amazing when you read through, especially the beginning when He created all things, and think about the fact that before man was here, before there was mankind, God was sufficient in just what He had created already.
Right.
And so many times people say, well, God needed man. He didn't need man. He created man because, like you said, everything was created to glorify Himself. And I think that's why we may get in this later on, but like in Romans 1, where it talks about man's without excuse,
right?
Because of that, because every time you walk outside and you see the trees, or even as living in Florida, as annoying as the pollen is, even things like that. I mean, there's a purpose for every little thing that happens, and God has created all things. And it's amazing the things that man has tried to create in nature fails. Yeah. For instance, love bugs. That's
is that a true story? I've never.
I heard that.
You both being from Florida, University of Florida.
I heard they were created at University of Florida.
That's what I've heard too. I don't know.
I don't know. I haven't heard.
I mean, we created
one.
Gatorade, so why not?
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah, seriously.
And then
and then these things that seems like their whole life's journey is to get stuck in the grill of your car.
Oh yeah,
yep.
And take the paint off your car. I don't get it. And then you think about something like a mosquito. Like I'm still trying to wonder what's the purpose of a mosquito. I don't know where the beauty is in that, but
pretty sure it's just part of the fall.
True.
Pretty sure.
Direct result.
Yeah. We're just gonna make something that make you itch.
So it is amazing when you just see the beauty of just God's handiwork.
Yeah.
Just the intricacies. I remember, I took art appreciation at University of Florida, and it was one of the first times in my life that I started to really see, man's hands creating things. And we go to the museums and stuff at UF, but then to grasp the fact that, okay, well, God gave man intellect to see that in his mind, and then God gave man hands to create, and then it started to like drive my mind. I was like, okay, this is of God,
right?
You know what I mean?
Right.
And it's really amazing when you think about that.
And it's cool when you can recognize that, and that's something I think as a photographer, that is amazing ability that God's given is like you see. I mean, so how many shots do you think when you take a picture in a shoot? How many of those shots are actually the ones that you use?
I mean, it varies. I would say when I first started, it would be more. But now, I mean, I can go out on a shoot and take 300-400 pictures and pull like 5-10 that I feel like these are, my absolute favorite. Now, you can repurpose a lot of the other ones and have different, uses for them. But that's the thing. A lot of it, it's kind of cool, too, because going out there, like, a lot of times I feel like you get to kind of like train your eye to see what's beautiful, and see what God has created and see how to frame that in a photo. But like you guys were saying, like there's so much of an element of, like what's actually good and what's actually like a good representation of the truth, and what are things that we want to celebrate, and that we want to, just say, hey, this is beautiful and this is a reflection of like who God is. So that's one of the things though, but you can take so many shots, but the true, like, really good moments that you capture can be pretty small in comparison.
And I like what you just said there as far as, that the truth of the moment. Like, so many times, you see a picture and you're like, that's not how they really look. Like, it's, in one sense, you're trying to put a 3-dimensional object onto a 2-dimensional, canvas or film, whatever have you. And so, sometimes you get some differences there. I know in medicine, at least, that's what happens with x-rays. You're like, that's why you have to do multiple angles. But so in photography, it's trying to catch that true essence. I don't know what word is best there of who they really are.
Yeah, it's like, it's kind of like the storytelling element of it too. It's like, I think in the past, there's a lot more emphasis of like painting this perfect picture. You know, when you take a picture, like making everything seem like extremely ideal all the time. But I also think it's really important, at least the way that I like go about whenever I like take pictures and things, is thinking about what's actually happening here, and then how do you communicate that in like a beautiful way. Because sometimes, you know, there are times when you're photographing things that aren't necessarily what we would consider the most beautiful things,
Right.
but how do you have that perspective of finding the threads of beauty in that and then
Right.
accentuating those, but also not deviating from like what's actually happening in the picture.
She was talking about when she was taking pictures of me. She's like, I mean, there's maybe a couple threads of beauty here.
Nah,
It's
you guys
really
are
hard.
great.
It's like God made
We're just putting my
Photoshop.
kids in front of the camera to help them.
Exactly. Could you go get your kids?
Yeah.
Let them
Oh, we have enough of you. Could you hold the camera? I'm gonna go get
You're beautiful as a dad. Not necessarily. No.
You have a good heart.
I'm just joking.
I love it.
I'm a beautiful person. I know that.
Don't forget it.
So, and then again, so the purpose of what we're doing, again, if God created everything, and you go to Colossians 1:16, is it says there that everything was made through him and for him, right? So if everything was made for him, then all creation is there to glorify him. And so again, we're meant to reflect the glory of God, and that's what I think an artist, and you know, full disclosure, I'm a nerd. I'm not necessarily artist. My mom was an artist. My dad was a computer nerd. I got more of the nerd part, and somewhere we got athletic part. I'm not sure. I think my dad played baseball too a little bit, but so I'm not necessarily good at that. In fact, today I pick out Caden's clothes, or Caden's or Kiana's, and my wife is like, "Does that even match?" I'm like, "I think it does." She's
Right.
like, "No, it doesn't. There's a standard, and you're short of it." You know,
That's sad. It's they're just going to a theme park. It's not like it's like they're going to Oil
I
Mills
mean,
or
it's
anything.
Disney. But, okay.
Yeah.
So, but everything is for his glory, and so it's supposed to reflect him. So there's a true reflection of him. So beauty and the arts are meant to reflect the glory of God. Now, the cool part about that is because God's an infinite God, I feel like there's pretty much infinite ways, not every way, and we'll talk about that in a second, but there's probably an infinite ways that you could just talk about his glory forever and show it. I mean, you know, through art. I mean, and so we're talking art, we're talking photography, painting, music.
Mhm.
I don't even know all the arts, but I mean, all the different
Literature.
films, literature,
Right.
poetry, all of that stuff too. So, I mean, I think that's kind of the cool part is like you have a job that really is almost never ending. You can
Mhm.
continue to catch that.
Yeah, one of the cool things too is it's like God's creation also is just one of the best ways that we all, like, aside from the Bible, can like learn about him and know him and
Right.
see, you know, just these little like reflections of who he is in the world. And even though there's the fall, there's still the threads of like his beauty woven all the way, you know, throughout the world. So that's one of the things I really enjoy about my job is, you know, sometimes I think people look at art and photography and things like that, and it's like, you know, is that really that important? And for me, I think it's one of the ways that it really helps me to have a bigger picture and a bigger view of who God is, and
Yeah.
just be more in awe of him too. So
Well,
it's kind of
good.
like fun. It's fun to be able to like roll that in, because not everyone, like, I feel like gets to do that every day, like on the job and stuff. So I enjoy that.
I mean, yeah, I mean, definitely I think it's important because, like, part of the way I know, you know, my wife is the way I hear her play the piano. That tells me something about who she is. That tells me, you know, something about her character. And she has a specific style that I know it's her playing the piano.
Right.
The way she, you know, hits the keys, her rhythms, you know, her transitions and all that thing. So I think that's the same thing with God. If we want to know God, right? And again, if we want to love God and we want to know about God and we want to be close to God, then one of the things that I think that we're going to have to do is at least gain an appreciation. We may not understand art, but gain an appreciation for the art,
Yeah.
for what he's done. I mean, he's a great God.
Yeah, we see the consistency of God in creation. You know, we just see the fact that God is never messed up. You
Yeah.
know,
Mm-hmm.
man, we've messed up.
Yeah.
But God never messed up in creation. You think,
Right.
you know, I used to fly to Vegas a lot for work, and if you've never seen the Grand Canyon, you can't even put it into words just
Yeah.
how grand that is. Okay, I didn't mean it as a pun, but just how
I like it.
massive.
I like it.
I guess just how massive it is. You know, when you're flying over and you think, you know, you're in a plane full of people, and usually the pilot will like tip and say, "Okay, this is the Grand Canyon." Everybody's like, "Oh," and like trying to get their phones out and stuff. And in my mind, I'm thinking, God is revealing himself right now to everyone that's playing to say, this
Right.
was me. Like, I
Right.
did this. You're in a plane where I could easily, like, dump this thing and land you in this, but yet I'm still being kind to you and merciful to you
Right.
to land you where you're going to your destination. Just little things like that God's just reminding us, you know? We live in Florida, hurricanes, you
Right.
know?
Right.
There's beauty in a storm sometimes, you know? There's heartache too, but there's a beauty in the way that God literally controls storms and nature and things like that. And it's amazing. And you start to question, like, how can someone deny the existence of God? Like, this isn't just chaos and random things just happening around us,
Right.
you know?
Yeah, that somehow this is all like some type of massively intricately choreographed, coordinated chaos.
Right,
Like, or not.
right.
Mhm.
Yeah.
You know, so and yeah, I mean, and sometimes we even see that beauty you know, like within ourselves in the sense of, you know, just being like the instrument, like you sing.
Mhm.
And so, you know, you can see what God has done in man's voice even in how they instrument. I'm gonna embarrass him for a second. I still remember you did an a cappella song. It was with like three other guys. I don't know, the
Maybe-
pastors
Oh, probably like
quartet
staff
or
quartet
something.
or
Yeah,
something.
staff quartet, whatever
Yeah.
it was. And he did that. I know that the thing was the "I want to see Jesus." That was the line. But I mean, you held this really high, all one breath, like "I want to."
Paul singing.
And he
I
and,
Beautiful.
you know, there. I don't know. I mean, because we're Reformed, people don't stand. But at that moment, I really was like, I want to stand, but then I'll be like, I'm gonna be the only. I mean, maybe next time I'm gonna.
I'm gonna start a podcast with that guy.
Like, that's what I'm talking. But you know, like in those moments, like and it's not like you yourself, but God through you brings you. I mean, through music. I mean, it gets our emotions to feel closer to God. In
Yeah.
art, when you take pictures, you look at that and you see God's beauty, and you feel closer to Him. So
Yeah, and to think how, you know, again, like Caitlin is, you know, and I would say I say an expert because compared to me, you're an expert in photography, things like that. But like your eye for what you see is going to be different than what I would see. Like
Right.
to me, I'm like, I
Mhm.
just want to get this in focus if I'm taking a picture. You know? You see like the surroundings of what's happening, like that
Right.
encompasses that whole scene. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And it's again, it's God's just revealing Himself throughout what you just said in every single person, what they see. You work in the hospital,
Right.
you know, so I think that God's revealing to you, okay, you see things that I would not see. I see someone laying on a table, you see what's wrong with them, you
Right,
know?
right.
So when I'm singing notes, some people are like, I can't sing. And I'm like, in my mind, when I'm moving with my notes, my mind is literally going like, okay, going up here. That's what my mind's doing.
yeah.
And so my voice just goes there. And so it's just amazing when you think about that. And then to be more intricate, you think about like, this is totally random, but I remember hearing about there's insects that have, you may know some about this, but there's insects that have like in their backside, I don't know what that's called, like their thorax maybe? I don't even know.
Yeah.
I tried to sound smart just
Abdomen
then.
or throat.
Yeah, whatever it's called.
Sure.
They have these chemicals. Have you heard about this? They have
Yeah.
these chemicals in that part of their body that are in these little chambers.
Mhm.
And if they mix in any way, they would die. But the way that they're in these chambers,
Yeah, it's a
and
type
they-
of beetle.
yes.
Mhm.
And then they like when things try to attack it, it like paralyzes it and things like that. It's amazing
Yeah,
stuff like that.
It's
You know?
two chemicals that they keep in chambers, and they bring it together at the tail right
Right.
when it expels them, and it actually can create a caustic type of
Yeah.
reaction. And if they were to mix in each other, it would kill the.
And for people to say that's an accident,
Yeah, that-
no. Like,
Mhm.
yeah. And again, that's beauty in creation. It may be an ugly beetle, but man,
Right.
that's beautiful design that God has for
and that's
creation.
actually the thing. I mean, and I'm sure you see it. I mean, even in photography, there's types of photography. There's like still just seeing an object, or you know, photographing people or nature, or you know that is it called journalism, where it's just kind of like you're catching life,
Mhm.
just like, and it's like a shot of like, you know, just a street during the day.
Yeah.
So there's all even like types that, you know, and you see God beauty in nature and humans, and like we said, literature, music, math. Have you guys, and I'm gonna nerd for a second, do you know what a fractal is? Have you ever heard of it?
I know what
So-
a Fraggle is.
I feel like I've heard of him, but
So
Fraggle
I need a
Rock.
refresher.
yeah, look it up. So a
Wait, is
fractal.
this having to do with someone's light? Something
So
light?
no, what
No?
it is
Okay.
basically it's a mathematical formula that basically when you graph it out, like paints this repeating picture, and you literally it repeats so much that you know, because numbers can go infinitely small, right? You can do like decimal places, 23, 25, 100 times past zero. So very, very small numbers, but it keeps repeating. And so what happens is this mathematical formula creates a picture. And it's a repeating picture that no matter how much you center on it, it kind of keeps repeating, and you can go to it's really cool.
Huh.
So awesome. And it's actually creating art with math.
Wow. Yeah. I wasn't even close. That goes my mind compared to yours. I'm thinking Fraggle Rock.
I like Fraggle Rock,
the little
too.
furry things in the caves. Yeah. Do you know what that is, Caitlin?
No. I was like, I am
how old I
lost.
I don't know. Fraggle Rock, absolutely.
Man.
There's the cartoon and the live action.
Yeah, there's the live one. Oh man, I just dated myself in that. Fraggle Rock. Wow.
That's funny.
So Fraggle Rock is basically like Muppets.
They're
But
like the Muppets. They hung out with the Muppets.
But they were like kind of
Interesting.
underground, and they had these little people that built structures.
Yeah,
but they were like
doozers
made of
or something like that?
Sugar? Was it sugar?
Yeah.
But the
You'll
Fraggle
have
was
to
like
look
to
this
eat.
up.
It was.
Yeah, I have to look into
They
this.
literally hung out with like Kermit and all those people, like Kermit, Miss Piggy and stuff. They were like that whole. Oh no, we just got.
I don't even.
Oh man,
We just got on the Fraggle Rock.
That's okay.
She's like, "What did I sign up for? Oh my goodness!"
I love it.
So, I guess the question would be for you, Caitlin. How, when you go and you're taking photography, do you do just exclusively like people, or do you do nature shots and other things too?
So I started out doing more people pictures, and I enjoy that a lot. But recently I've been doing more travel and just doing more stuff, just even with my job and things like that, to where I'll do more like landscape or kind of like, I guess lifestyle is a good way to like explain it. So it's when you take pictures of maybe activity or action. It's not necessarily just like a person sitting there, but it's like whatever activity that they're doing. But yeah, so wide variety of things. I've tried a lot of different things, but I think my favorite, I really do like doing just more of the action, like lifestyle kind of stuff like that.
Do you do like movies too with it, or is it just still?
I've just started doing more video. I feel like, I don't know, I lean towards photography because it's more in my wheelhouse. But one thing I love about video is you really get, I don't know, more of the full moment of what's going on. So if you're covering an event or an activity or something like that, you can look at it from a lot of different perspectives, and you can combine more things than you can with just maybe like normal photos. So kind of, let's say you're taking like, a video of like a boat, because a lot of what I do with work is like boating and fishing based. But so if you're doing something like that, you might get like a detail like video of like the tackle box, but then zoom way out to a drone shot of the boat's running or things like that. And it's cool to be able to like have a holistic perspective of what's happening, that sometimes that's like outside of what you normally get in your own experience, and I think that part's cool with video. So
Did I just hear you fly drones?
Oh,
I
no.
heard that too.
I let some other people fly them because Caitlin
my brain
is
stopped that.
not.
You have a drone.
No, I
That's
have,
awesome.
at work we have some, but I don't know if I totally trust myself to fly a drone. It might end up in the ocean and I'd feel terrible. So,
That's why we have a big church parking lot though. You can go out there and
but
practice.
yeah, that is a cool perspective. I like it.
So what for you would you say? I don't know. Is there a way that maybe there's not like this is the moment, like this is the moment of beauty that I'm trying to capture? Is there something that tells you that?
So for me, kind of, but it's just like a process of like getting outside for a couple of hours. I do almost all of my photography outdoors, and I really like bright sun, like photography like that. But a lot of times it's a process of like, you go into an environment or wherever you're going to shoot and you don't totally know exactly what you're looking for. So you get out there and you're like, get a feel for the place that you're in. And then it's kind of like the whole process of like, you'll take a couple pictures and they'll all be terrible, like the first 5, because you don't know what you're looking for. And then over time though, you start to like get out there and get a feel for the place, and you start to see more things than you did when you were first there. So for me, it's a lot about just spending the time to look for like the details and look for the things that are like maybe a different perspective than, just standing and looking at, I'll use the Grand Canyon as an example. Like, say you're just standing on the edge of the Grand Canyon, you might see one thing, but when you spend like an hour there, you start to see all the little details that, make it unique or different, or things that people wouldn't necessarily see. So for me, it really depends on the time of the day that I'm shooting. Like, if I'm shooting, landscape and there's good sun, then usually if there's a lot of like good natural light, and then just kind of figuring out how to frame images where you get that light in there in a pretty way that you like. But a lot of it, for me, it took a lot of time, because it really is training your eye. Like, I think I spent a lot of time just, taking a lot of pictures and stuff like that. But over time, you start to train your eye for what you're looking for. So a lot of it for me is looking at good photography, looking at things that I'm like, wow, that's a really good shot. But then thinking of for myself, how do I, come up with and have that kind of beauty in a shot, but also make it original to like the perspective that I'm looking at, I guess. Long answer, but
no, that's a good answer. That's a great answer.
Yeah, no, I like that. And
wow.
So then you don't. Maybe it's not something you can always state, but there seems to be like an objective standard that you're looking for as something that's good.
Yeah, so that's the thing that's really interesting about photography and just art in general is that, there's 100% like things that you're looking for that objectively make something like beautiful or not. And sometimes you can take things that are not necessarily objectively beautiful in themselves and make them so through the way that you, take a photo of it or like create the art. So for an example, like I shoot a lot of times by like abandoned like old buildings. Like I really like some of the architecture of that, but in the shot that I take, you wouldn't necessarily know that it's an abandoned old building when you look at it. And so I think it kind of goes back to, that's one of my favorite things about photography is sometimes just the restorative aspects of it, of like taking things that are maybe broken or taking things that aren't, in and of themselves beautiful, and then saying, okay, how can we like reshape and reorient this so that there is like an objective beauty to it, and you can find those threads of beauty that God's created because they're there, but just kind of like restoring the beauty to those things. So that's,
I think that's
cool
a
too.
beautiful analogy of just the world in general.
I was as she was saying that, I was thinking that's us.
I mean, that's
human. That's mankind.
We're broken, and the world's broken, and yet there are still objectively beautiful things within the world.
Yeah. And a lot of times God's the only one that sees that beauty in the brokenness of who we are, Yeah. Wow, that's really good.
It's kind of cool too, because to me, like, sometimes it just makes me think of the gospel. A lot of times it's like, God has taken us when we were completely broken and like dead in our sins, and then given us life in Christ and like recreated and remade us into something beautiful and like actually redeemed us out of our brokenness. So I think that's like really cool. And then as you start to look in the world and see threads of like how, the like beauty is being restored, and how God like takes broken things and makes them whole again, like that to me is really exciting. So I like to go, like when I'm shooting and when I'm doing art and things like that, it's cool to pick up on those things and make those connections too.
And I think honestly man, so many things just came to my mind. Like that's the type of thing that I think we need a little bit more, because there are things and even people sometimes that don't meet the standards of beauty that the world says. And I can even think of like maybe you were born in a certain way, maybe there was disfigurement because of something that happened, or you have some type of genetic thing at birth that the world will look at you and say, wow, that's really different, and maybe that's not beautiful. But man, I just thought of myself, like, maybe we need people to show the world the beauty of God in that person.
Right.
That maybe, there's parts of them that are broken, just like we all are broken. But man, the art of showing the objective beauty within those type of people and within different things that are kind of what we would commonly think of as broken, man, that would be a glory to God too.
Yeah.
Because he has made every one of us in his image, and therefore there has to be objective beauty within us.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree.
So and within that, I spend a little bit of time. So if there's an objective standard, that means that things can go below the standard. And I think the biggest way is if our art is not done to glorify God. You think if there's some grotesque, and I'm not going to say it over again. I don't want to ruin our explicit rating.
We're trying to get rid of our explicit rating.
But there are some things people have done, and honestly, some of them are direct affronts to God. They've done things specific to profane the name of God through their art that God would not find beautiful.
Right.
Or I would think of TV shows or movies and the way that they just display people and the way that they display nudity or whatever, and some of their ideologies that God would not find beautiful.
Right.
And the question is, do we look at that and say that does not meet the standard of beauty and therefore reject it? Or do we go, well, it's just in someone's expression and therefore it's okay? Right. Do we think God thinks it's okay?
Yeah, I think that's one of those things where it's like, when you're looking at the idea of beauty, you have to always balance it with truth and with what is, good. So you have to
Yeah.
have those three things lined up, or beauty ceases to be beauty. If you separate it out from the truth of what is objectively good and just the truth of who God is, and then try to exalt other things, then that beauty is no longer actually, it's not beauty
Amen.
anymore. And so it's kind of cool though, like, part of it is just aligning like your heart with God's heart and your mind and your perspective on the truth of what God's word says, and letting that shape your pursuit and enjoyment of beauty for his glory. Because a lot of it, it's easy to, like, for us just as people, and because of the fall, to have like a warped perspective of beauty. So we have to expect that in ourselves, and then go to God's word to find like what is true and what is good, and then therefore what is beautiful.
I mean, it almost sounds like you're saying when we do these types of things in the arts that it's a form of worship.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
It sounded like that to me too.
But it is, right? If everything in our life is
Absolutely.
going to be, whether we eat or drink
Absolutely.
or whatever do all to the glory of God. So if the way we do art is a form of worship,
Right.
is there a way we're worshiping God correctly? And I love that you said, like, you have to line up the beauty with truth and what's good. You have to have those types of things together for it to really be something that would be pleasing to God. That's I think that's really important. And are those things that we're looking for when we see a movie? Are those things we're looking for when we go to an art museum? And yes, I go to art museums, people. And
It's 'cause you're kids.
I see the turkey hands.
Oh man.
I didn't know. No, but so when we go to these things, do we see that, or do we I don't know, do we give in to what the world's saying? I remember going to an art museum over in Tampa, and I mean, there was one whole exhibit that was honestly kind of grotesque in what they were showing, and it was to this kind of neo-feminism thing, and it was almost, I'm not going to say it, but it's similar to what some of them were wearing as hats.
Oh.
And some of these parades, they were displaying this type of stuff, and I'm like, really? And this is what the museum is putting forth as, no, this is beauty, this is art. And you're like, are we gonna accept that, or are we gonna go, no, there's a standard, and I don't accept that as a standard. That's not beautiful because,
Right.
or do we take what the world says is beautiful?
Well, because you think about it, the world will say that sin is beautiful.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
The world says that it's a beautiful thing for a baby to be aborted
Right.
because it's a woman's right, and as Christians we say, but yeah, what about the rights of that baby? So it's all about what you said, like what is true, what is honorable, what is God pleasing, God glorifying, what honors the Lord in what you're doing. Well, I think what you do, I think because of your mindset, you're seeing the beauty and creation of what God has done, and I think that's why God has just really shown that to you in the way that you look at things, and Paul, where you're the way that you are in where you work, I think God has given you that vision of like, how am I glorifying God in this? And then what I'm able to do in leading worship and stuff like that, it's like all three of us in our different facets of what we do, they're all different ministries. Just because I just happen to be on stage at a church does not make it any more or less ministry wise than the three of us or what we're doing. Because if it's pleasing to God, it's like Romans 12. Our lives are to be reasonable worship unto him, reasonable service unto the Lord. And so I think it's important for Christians to understand that, and no matter what facet they're going into, a lot of times we talk about how we gear this podcast towards young adults, what we do. There's a lot of other people, which we're so thankful for, that listen, but we really gear it towards young adults. And a lot of times they're really trying to ask that question of like, what do I do next? Caitlin, you talked about when you left school, I don't know if you said it on here right before we came on, but like what you're doing, you thought you'd be doing something differently from what you learned, you know what I mean? And I think a lot of times that's what happens, it's like, I thought I'd be doing something different in life. And then God's like, yeah, but I want you to be doing this with your life. Yeah. And I think Caitlin is a great example of that,
right? Of
what God said, this is what I'm going to have you be doing. I'm going to have you discipling with these young ladies. I'm going to have you doing this over here on the side. I'm going to have you work at this company. And it's all going to be interwoven for my glory to be on display. And I think it's one of the reasons that, I know you and I have really talked about a lot having Caitlin on here, because she's a great example of a young lady who is serving the Lord, not just because, we say this all the time, not just because she's a single young lady,
right,
but because she's a Christian young lady.
Absolutely.
Who's doing what she feels that God has called her to do.
Right. It's obedience.
Exactly.
And what's interesting, I think, about that too, And I was just thinking, a lot of the artists, when we see pastors, when we see people who are serving, some of the artistic expressions that they put out there. I mean, John Piper does poetry. I know John MacArthur has done singing. He does special music. He loves singing hymns. A lot of our hymns are from people who are pastors. Martin Luther, right? A Mighty Fortress. Right. And so I think part of that is when you see the beauty of God, like sometimes that brings out like some type of expression of wanting to, and not all of us are going to be famous in what we do, but I think in our own way. Right. And I think that's important to do. But that's going to come out of a heart that's been obedient to God, a heart that's serving, and then kind of the overflow of that, you're going to see, people will see what you're doing is beautiful. I think it's one thing to have the technical of being able to put paint on a canvas or being able to take, like you said, a picture in focus, but then it's that beyond that of the skill of, you know, capturing the right moment. And I think some of that could be from an overflow of a heart that's trying to capture the beauty that God has. Mm-hmm. So, did you always have a bent for photography? Was that something you picked up later? Did you have an artistic bent, you know, as a growing up?
So this is always a funny question to answer because when I went to college, I would tell people I was going to study journalism, and I told everyone, literally all of my friends freshman year, like, knew this. I was like, I'm the least creative person that you will ever meet in your life. Like, I would tell people that. I was like, I like facts. Like, I'm very straightforward. Like, journalism will be great because it's just writing down the facts. And that was really totally like a God thing because he just started to give me more opportunities to do a couple of creative projects. And I was like, okay, maybe I like this. Yeah. But I didn't start photography until I think it was my sophomore or junior year of college. And then, and honestly, at that point, I just started really enjoying that. But then also other like expressions of art. Like I really like music and I really like, just like painting and like, stuff like that too. So some of that stuff started coming out later, but a lot of it was I just, I had this idea of what I thought that, I enjoyed and what I thought I liked doing. And God was like, just kidding. You're really good at all this other stuff. You should do that instead. So no, I was not always bent that way. I think a lot of it was I didn't like to, with creativity as well and with like photography, your work is on display for other people to see. And I didn't like that too much, but God just gave me a lot of like grace with that and was like, just gotta, trust that if I give you a gift and ability, then, use that and see what happens and don't worry so much about, people aren't gonna like certain things. Yeah.
So maybe for someone who, I don't know, wants to start off or is like, I don't feel necessarily creative, what is there advice that you would have for them? Are there steps that they could take or what could they do?
Yeah, honestly, my biggest thing and the most helpful thing was just, training my eye. So spending time, around people who are good at art or good at and very like creative, and then just spending a lot of time looking at a lot of pictures and things like that. So my job right now is social media, and during the day I have to look through like hundreds and hundreds of pictures to determine what we post, what we don't, things like that. And for me, looking at all that content and all like being able to go through that list and saying this is good, this is not, here are the X, Y, and Z reasons, that will really help just train your eye. Because I think the biggest thing too is just getting out there and like trying, because you're not gonna be 100% like your best when you first start, and that's okay. I'm not 100% my best now, so it's a process of just getting outside or getting in whatever element or whatever, type of art and stuff that you want to do, just being out there and doing it, and then just spending time training your eye on it a lot. It just takes time. It's like learning a language kind of, and is the way I see it, or it's not something that you can just memorize and have like the formula to. It's something that you just practice over and over and you get better with time. So
that's great. Cool. And where can people find your photography at?
Oh, yeah. So I do have a website. It's thegoldenkateco.com. So there's a lot of photography there. And then on my Instagram page, I usually post lots of pictures of random things. So
The Golden Kate Co?
Yes.
The Golden Kate Co, like CO.
Yeah. Started out as a blog. Now I have a lot more photography on there. And I'm going to start selling art prints, so it'll all be in one place. But
do you have anything on YouTube?
Oh, let's not talk about YouTube. I had to delete it after this podcast.
You hear this podcast, go look at YouTube real quick. And
don't look at it. That was a failed attempt at being a YouTuber. Not revisiting that one.
I had to get that in there.
Thank you for that. I appreciate the shout out.
That's awesome. So we'll put a link down below, not to the YouTube, but to the, I guess your Instagram, and we'll put it to your website as well.
Yes.
And the Golden Kate Co. And if you're in the area and you need some photography, I can say that personally recommend From Our Family Photography is great. So
and if you're not in the area and you want to pay for her to come out,
yeah,
here, I guess
I'm sure she'll fly out.
Yeah.
Caitlin likes to travel.
She does like to
so.
travel, but Caitlin would not travel for free. So that's right. And we won't let her travel for free.
So, anyways, anything else?
Well,
this has been really fun. Go ahead.
Great. No, I was just gonna say it's been great to have you on here. I'm so glad, and I appreciate the fact you came during your lunch break.
Yeah,
I really
that's awesome.
enjoy it.
So,
It's been good.
we really appreciate that, and I just want to say thank you, just as someone in ministry at the church that you serve at, just the example that you are. I know I've said that already, but you're a great example to these young ladies and men. I mean, you're an example to me of how to continually glorify God in every avenue of your life. You know, and it's encouraging to see that. I know me and my wife talk about that all the time. It's like, man, Caitlin's such a special young lady. Like, I'm so glad that God has her in our congregation and in our community, especially in our Crossroads group and stuff like that. So it's been a joy to get to know you better over the last few years since you've been back and stuff the last couple of years. So that's just what I want to kind of throw in there on the interwebs for people to hear.
On the interwebs.
On the interwebs.
You know what? We appreciate our listeners too.
Yep.
They keep us going and give us ideas, and we appreciate all the feedback to our Gmail.
Yeah.
Not.
Okay, so let's just say this real quick. Let's throw this out there because it's been a few weeks. So we put a contest out there to say what was it, like whoever would email us first?
All you had to do was email.
All you had to do was send us email.
I think it was
could've just
5
said
people.
hi.
5 people.
It could have said hi.
Yeah.
Who emailed?
Only one person.
And who was that?
Your mom.
My mom.
That's really sweet of her, though.
It was a very sweet email.
It was a sweet email. It was very encouraging.
Your mom is a very good person.
We need to get my mom a shirt.
Oh,
she's gonna get
We'll
one.
get a shirt. But
no, she's getting a shirt.
we were gonna give people a shirt. The first person to email us, we would have given them a free shirt. And I mean, come on, people. I know you're online all the time, so just.
And they're coming. The order went through. We've had some design stuff, so
you guys are gonna like the shirts.
So we'll get you one too for coming on, Caitlin.
Yeah, Caitlin.
Wow,
Oh yeah,
I
because
love shirts.
I don't think we told Colton he's getting one. So
I think we did.
Did
Yeah,
we?
you should give Colton one too.
I don't know.
He's getting
We'll
married
decide.
soon, so we'll
yeah,
see.
we'll decide.
Maybe we'll wrap it as a gift from
A wedding gift.
Project 224.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
That's so funny.
That's awesome.
All right, guys. Well, continue to listen to us. We thank you for that, and we hope you guys have a blessed week.
Thanks, everybody.